Hi there, my name is Keith Bunt, pastor at New Life Christian Fellowship in Thunder Bay. Thanks for joining with me, and I pray as we look at the Word of God, you would be challenged and yet encouraged. We've been looking at discipleship, what it is. I mean, we resonate with Jesus' words in Matthew 28, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Not just help people accept Christ, but to become a disciple. And looking at discipleship and the Sabbath, it can be a point of contention. And I want to look at what Scripture has to say about the Sabbath, because when you look at the Sabbath and you look at what how Jesus responded in his ministry, there are challenges. You have to ask the question, have you ever broken the law? I'm not asking for your criminal past, but and what offenses you have committed, but really, what have you done that nobody else knows about? And you kind of like, where you just kind of hold it. You say, Lord, help me. I want to be free of that. We've all seen somebody break the law. Maybe it's running a red light. Maybe you saw somebody steal a candy bar, lied or gossiped or struck somebody in anger. I'm reminded of a quote from Leonard Ravenhill where he says, when you see someone sin, you become the judge. But when you sin, you become the defense attorney. We all have done it. We justify it, and we're stuck in that ground. I understand that when it comes to spiritual things, we break the law continually. If you want to look at the specifics of Mosaic law, we break it continually, and that's where Jesus in the beatitudes says, if you've thought about it, you've done it. Don't let your mind lead you astray. So we've got to come in looking at law, looking at it with grace. In this passage that we're looking at today, we read about how Jesus broke the Mosaic law. Moses set up a law in place, and Jesus broke it. Now think of it. Jesus broke the law, but yet Jesus never sinned. Did he sin by breaking the law of the Sabbath? And so what can you do on the Sabbath? And why is the Sabbath so different than other days? And I think we need to reflect on that. Let's read Luke chapter 6, verses 1 to 5. One Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples broke off heads of grain, rubbing off the husks in their hands, and ate the grain. But some Pharisees said, "Why are you breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?" Jesus replied, "Haven't you read the scriptures? What Jesus did when he and his companions were hungry? They went into the house of God and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests can eat. He also gave some to his companions." And Jesus added, "The Son of Man is Lord, even over the Sabbath." So why is the Sabbath so special? Let's look at the beginning of the Sabbath. And what better place to start than to look at the birthplace, the essence where Sabbath was birthed. I'm going to read Genesis chapter 1 verse 31 and through to chapter 2 verse 3. And God looked over all that he had made. He saw that it was very good. And the evening passed and morning came, marking the sixth day. So creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. And on the seventh day, God finished his work of creation. So he rested from his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from the work of all his creation. Three things to note about the Sabbath from this passage. Firstly, God worked on creation for 6 days. And I think that's a hard concept. I mean, to think that God worked. I mean, we're used to God speaking, but even as he spoke, that's work. He developed an essence for us to follow. We're created in his image. He worked, and he created us to work. Secondly, God created 6 days where he worked, and then he rested on the seventh. God needed to take a break. Do you know that you need to take a break? You need to take a break and consider what has been created, what you worked on. God took time to reflect. He rested. And thirdly, God blessed the seventh day. You know, we read where in the end of the 6th day, God looked over all he made and saw that it was very good. But the 7th day, he blessed it. And he declared it holy. He set it apart. It's set apart. That's what holy means. It's set apart from all the other days. And he rested. You know, as I already reiterated, you and I were created to do 2 things, to work and to rest. You know, I mean, I'm not talking about sleeping. I'm not talking about just kicking your feet back, but a time to reflect upon all that has been created. It's interesting that as you go through the Old Testament, there's no mention of the Sabbath with Abraham. But when Moses came into the picture and the people of Israel needed to have some order and direction, he created the law. And the law was there to help the people of Israel develop focus. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 to 10, we read that remember to observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. Farther on in Exodus 31, verse 15 to 16, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but on the 7th day must be a Sabbath day of complete rest, a holy day dedicated to the Lord. Anyone who works on the Sabbath must be put to death. The people of Israel must keep the Sabbath day by observing it from generation to generation. This is a covenant obligation for all time. Think of it. I mean, this is the climate. This is the law which governed the people of Israel. This is the culture that Jesus was raised in, where the Sabbath was a holy day set apart. And even to the extent in those years that they would put somebody to death for breaking the Sabbath. You know, they even had such strict rules in Exodus 35 verse 3 that you must not even light a fire in any of your homes on the Sabbath. I know of a gentleman of Jewish origin that they wouldn't even allow to turn on a light bulb. They wouldn't even allow to open the fridge door. They had to have all their food prepared. And they had to have everything set up so they wouldn't cook. They wouldn't use a microwave. They wouldn't use anything to heat at all. I'm not too sure. They must have made some exception for people living in the north, because you got to light a fire to stay alive when it's minus 30 outside. This culture that Jesus lived in was challenging. It created honor and a view of God. But into this comes Jesus with what is the hallmark of his ministry. It's not the law, but it's grace and faith. You're saved by grace, not by works, not by how well you keep the Sabbath. So what does it mean when Jesus says in Luke chapter 6, verse 5, that the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. Is Jesus making himself above the law? In Matthew 5, verse 17 to 20, Jesus in his teaching says, "Don't misunderstand why I have come. I did not come to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. I came to accomplish their purpose. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest detail of God's law will disappear until its purpose is achieved. So if you ignore the least of these commandments and teach others to do the same, you will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But anyone who obeys God's laws and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. But I warn you, unless your righteousness is better than the righteousness of the Pharisees, teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." See, the fulfillment of law is through Jesus, through faith in him. By faith alone. See, you cannot please God by keeping all the laws perfectly. Jesus said that to the rich young man. And he says, I've kept it all. And Jesus turned to him and said, well, sell everything you have and give it to the poor. See, there's always something in us that holds back. I can't do it, he said. You've been given a gift. You know, if you were to hold your hands out and look at them, you see nothing, but you have something there. You have a gift in this day. You have a gift in the Sabbath. In Mark chapter 2, verse 27, Jesus says to them, the Sabbath was meant to meet the needs of the people, meet your needs. Not for people, not for you to meet the needs or the requirements of the Sabbath. You've been given a gift. A gift. You know, we look at our hands and we see, oh, they're empty. You've been given a gift in that day. A day of rest. To reflect upon God. To restore your soul. You know, in my previous years, I've worked in soil science. I have family who are farmers in the west of Canada. But, you know, technology said you must do what's called continuous cropping. You must go out and crop every year. You must sow the seed. And every year, you know, when my uncle first started farming, they made a habit of making sure that parcel of land, the 80 acres or 160 acres, every 7th year was a fallow year. They did not plow it. They left it so that it would rest, that the land would rest. And then, of course, the greed of money and the institution of fancy fertilizers brought in the whole idea of continuous cropping. And for years, farmers out west have been doing continuous cropping, and now some are waking up and actually putting their land to fallow every 7 years. Just putting it to rest. You and I need a rest. You may be able to work for 7 days, 20 days, who knows how many days straight, but you need rest. The Sabbath is a gift to mankind. It's a gift to you. Use it. Enjoy it. Celebrate God through it. See, you need a break. Not you want a break. We all want breaks. We want something. But God has designed you to need a break. And God has given you one. He took a break. Do you think you're above God, that you can work without breaks? So what can you do on the Sabbath? You know, is it beneficial? Ask yourself, is what I'm doing beneficial? And I'm not talking about siding your house or cleaning the walk. No. Are you encouraging life? Are you filling life with work, or filling life with work and stuff? I mean, It's different from all other days. Keep it holy. Keep it blessed. No other day has that distinction of being holy and blessed. Enjoy a day to reflect upon God and the work that you have been blessed to accomplish. God did. He created you and I to do the same. I pray that you would be encouraged and strengthened in your walk with Him as a disciple. Sabbath is an important day to keep. Whatever day you keep as a Sabbath, take time to rest and reflect upon God and His goodness. Thanks for joining with me.